Looks like we lost Mike there.
We did. We lost. We have a guest, everybody. Welcome. We are back again this week with the Path Forward, and we're working through some technical difficulties to stream with a brilliant contributor, Mike Mackey, who has been on 2 episodes of the Path Forward that we have up on the site. Mike is a wealth of knowledge, a master horticulturalist, and as so in organic agriculture, he is in a rural location. And so we're going to see if we can get Mike back with us, and we're going to get to talk to him some today. It looks like he might be joining again, and that'll be very exciting.
He's appropriately not available because he's on the farm.
Here he is. So I'm going to add him
in. Back. There we go.
Mike.
Mr. Mackey.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Well, it's still morning here.
That's true. You're live and direct. Now we're streaming on the internet, and we've started. So we lost you there, but we've got you back, and very happy to have you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I was reminding our audience that you're on 2 of our episodes of A Path Forward. And now everyone gets to see you as well. You were just telling us where you're located. Why don't I'll stop talking and you tell us where you are and what you've been up to?
Well, I'm on the Oregon-California border. Our place here is a 150-year-old former stage stop inn, where I'm sitting on the 3rd floor right now. And in 1871, the last stage came because the railroad came and replaced it. This is over this gas down to connecting sort of Central California, but it's not the main train line. In fact, it's very quiet here. I came to Southern Oregon a couple of years ago to of the impending collapse of the cannabis industry, thinking a lot of stranded assets here, because this thing's going to take a big tumble. And for instance, we just got 20 acres worth of drip irrigation equipment, pumps, filters, line, everything like that, essentially for the taking, being abandoned in the brand new on pallets. I'm also the co-caretaker of a little homestead up in the Umpqua, in the Forest, which property was one of several properties acquired by a fellow who sold his interest in a successful business in Southern California, came to Oregon to participate in the cannabis industry, bought these beautiful properties, and then proceeded to go broke. And so he's got all these lovely properties, but there's no living to be made in the cannabis industry these days. So it's a very interesting situation. There are tons of assets, skilled people, idiots from here down in they actually stand nice little cultural oasis in the middle of a farm and logging. My background.
I like it. Well, that's maybe what we should do is also introduce who you are. So I mentioned briefly that you're a master horticulturalist and in a rural area, as you said, while we have some technical difficulties, but introduce yourself a little bit so that folks who maybe haven't heard either of the episodes with you know a little bit more about who you are, and then we'll start talking about some of our favorite topics.
Okay, well, I come from the Olympic Peninsula, where I've still got a little agroforestry project. So if you want a single word that sort of describes my passion and interest and skills to some, it's agroforestry, and that's the combined synthesis of forest land or and agriculture in ways that get multiple functions out of the land. A modern version of that is called permaculture, which has got more bells and whistles and stuff hanging on it, but it's the same idea of multifunctional landscape design and operation. That's what I've been interested in all my life. The organic agriculture movement. I sort of grew up, was on the initial board of directors, Health Association is our regional organic ag, and now the farm certification and a lot of education. So a pioneer in the organic field. And along the way, you end up in a few different occupations. Or I did spend a couple decades in the cannabis industry myself back in the 80s and early 90s, and that was a lot of fun. The idea is that we are barely using the we're more worried about too many people than a better way, because we can intelligence, tradition, and modern technology. So we're I believe we're really at the cusp of a whole really important era in food production. At the same time, the corporate influence through, I believe in old-fashioned plant modified organisms, but some are some very technologies that we're interested in. I see a lot. It's me and a whole network of people working together and individually in a network sort of way to bring medicinal plants and their production systems forward into commercial production. And I also work in the Amazon basin doing the same sort of thing, based out of Iquitos, Peru, where I'll be going back here in a few weeks. So 2 continents, 72 years.
Thanks, Mike. I might
Enough.
That's great. No, that's great. I think I might recap a little. It's breaking up on us some, so we might try having you turn off your video just because I want to hear your words. And I'm going to just recap a little bit of that for folks. Pasquale, are you hearing me okay clearly? Oh, I can't hear you. I think you might be muted.
I'm on. Okay, apologies. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah. So I think we should do that. Maybe do the audio just to save some bandwidth with Mike, because at the very least, what you're saying is so valuable, Mike, and we want to at least. It was kind of cutting in and out, so if you can recap that.
Just to hear, yeah. Well, I'm going to recap just a little bit and just say from my point of view and who I know Mike to be. He oftentimes speaks very humbly and very accurately, about himself. But you heard him mention the Oregon Tilth organization. Mike is a real pioneer in all of what most people know as organic agriculture. So I think he dropped, and hopefully he'll join us again. But it's despite any technical hurdles, I'm going to add him back in here. There we go. Welcome back with us, Mike. We're just recapping sort of what you said, and I'm sharing who you are to me, who I know you to be, and talking about, folks to understand your history in terms of organic agriculture, permaculture movement. Folks might not know, we all know about organic produce now. That wasn't something that was something, once upon a time that was in health food stores. If people are old enough to know that, maybe that's kind of a general term, but you get the idea.
Right.
And now it's such a common and even, like you said, corporate interest. But Mike was a true pioneer in permaculture and the technologies that create organic agriculture. In that world, a lot of people are familiar. They shop by USDA organic, but that tilth name, Oregon Tilth, in Oregon. We also have a tilth organization in Washington, where Mike was saying is originally from. Oregon Tilth, to me, is basically the platinum standard of organic produce and goods. So USDA, there's a little bit more wiggle room on what might be used in terms of pesticides and other things you might care about. Oregon Tilth is one of the highest bars in the world, and Mike is a founding member, or very close with a lot of the folks that created all of that. So that might tie it into people's lives who are listening, the food that they try to eat. Please go ahead, Mike. We might have you cut video.
We're closing in on 50 years that we began the Tilth Association, which was... Okay. I'm trying to do that.
No problem. Oh, there we go.
But last time I did, you went away.
We got you.
Okay. So, yeah, we're going on 50 years, the founding of the Tilth Association here in 2023. And that began as people knew each other, knew a few neighbors, but it was really a lot isolated little pockets and individuals of people who were pursuing organic agriculture at whatever scale. And so a couple of folks said, let's just raise the flag and see who shows up. And we had that conference 50 years ago in Ellensburg, Washington, at Central Washington University. And it was, some hundreds of very interesting and interested people who came and just sort of came out of the woodwork and met each other and began the Tilth Association. From there, we began publishing a quarterly journal called Tilth, Journal of Biological Agriculture. We've preferred that.
Oh, shoot. We just lost him. This is the trick with being in rural places. So I promise we will try to get Mike on a better connection. And I'll just say, he's starting to tell us about those origins, and hopefully he'll come back. We have an episode that's about plant medicine. We'll get there today as well with Mike if we can get a stable. There's kind of a through line from this origins of permaculture, organic agriculture, through to plant medicine. And even in that episode, I talked to Mike in Peru, and we had some challenges, but what he has to say, I think, has so much value. I'm willing to kind of keep trying here to have him with us. You're back.
So we published it. So we published a little. Yeah. So just by way of history, because I recounted this just a couple of nights ago, in a barn that we built little cubicles for people to stay in, and a trailer. We published a magazine, operated a farm, helped give birth to the what's become the nouvelle cuisine of the Pacific Northwest. When what you can eat flowers. Wow, really a handmade journal. We used X-Acto knives and barge cement, pasted up the pages. In fact, there was somebody in Seattle. There was the Daisy Wheel printer was all we had with our little Apple II computer, and so you couldn't. That really wasn't camera-ready copy. So somebody in Seattle invented a thing they called the black box that enabled us to take an IBM Selectric typewriter with those little balls that replace the different fonts, and we could run our Apple II through the black box onto the IBM Selectric, and we ran that thing day and night. We published a book, we published a journal, and we got the warranty for the IBM, and just told the guy with the blue tie to come every week, because we're gonna break this thing for sure. Just come and maintain it. It actually held up pretty well, but the IBM guy coming up from Seattle would come out to the farm, and he'd see these people in various states of lack of clothing and big smiles, and he was eager to come back. He came every week, sure thing. And we were also the closest telephone for a large commune, a couple hundred people at the end of the road, called the Israel family. So we were their local phone booth, because they weren't allowed to have a phone on the commune. Of course, everybody still needs to use a phone. So we had a steady. Who are these? Where am I? What's going on? Well, this is the 70s and going into the 80s now. We published a book called "The Future Is Abundant," which was a website before there was web. Essentially, write letters to people and get more information. The Future is Abundant. It's still out there. I think it's online now. All our archives recently were given to Washington State University, so all the boxes of stuff that we saved, correspondence, and everything is now archived at WSU. So, because things tend to disappear in one's life, you probably noticed that yourselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. One, and people, if folks don't know, just to interrupt,
soon enough,
Washington State
there was
University has an amazing agriculture school
of interest in organics. You know what they do, and they have one of the country's leading organic egg. Students at WSU they began lobbying for classes in integrated pest management and this sort of thing. Notably, a fellow named David Granatstein, who became later a faculty, who was really helped steer the sustainable ag program at WSU into where it is now. With I think they're doing well in terms of students up, seeing that there's a career path here, that there are enough like-minded people to actually create an industry. We're there now. We're in the I don't know, $8 billion, something like that, organic U.S., maybe more.
Probably
but we're
more.
Still at less than what I think it's 2.5% of the food sold is organic, despite all the labeling you see. But that's all changing quickly, and in the process, who's involved in the game to the land? Folks like ourselves. It's more farmers who are looking for market entry and they still have to play by the rules. We set up you mentioned Oregon Tilth. We started our own certificate. People wanted to be certified organic. Well, okay, we'll take the Organic Gardening Magazine folks as sort of their standards, and we'll invent organic certificate. So being the first organic certifying guy out there at that time, we asked questions, took a good look around the farm to see what was in the cans behind if there's another kind of a term for my career path, it's as an extension agent. Co-op extension at a WSU had little time and rather scorn for the organic movement before it was a movement. And so they had their set of answers to public questions, but when people kept asking them about how do I do this without pesticides, they said, better figure this out. And so we began a really nice relationship with WSU, Washington State Department of Agriculture, later USDA, and then USDA, of course, who owns the word organic, by the way. It took to a standard that is what we have today. And that's still a bit of a moving target. They recognizes over 5,000 different compounds that are as organically certified. When you get down to the fine grain of it, what is and isn't organic in a more sophisticated system, you just finally have to have an arbitrary line. And there's a very well balanced panel of folks who meet twice a year and consider what's good and what's not good, and maybe this should be discontinued as certified organic. It's become, you can imagine, from pigs to flowers, there's a lot of technique and technology and products that are potentially involved in it's I don't use fertilizers, but really it's more now a very advanced, we'll say advancing some of what we do, and now that we have tricks to see how we're doing. Next question.
Perfect. Thanks a ton, Mike. I just put you on chat. It's so nice to have you, and I think everything you're saying is so valuable. It's breaking up a little bit in the audio, but I'm just happy to have you here. We might try the no video thing again, but what I'm thinking is today we just want to keep introducing you and kind of hit the highlights.
I don't know if you can hear our bloodhound.
Couldn't hear him barking away. Well, hopefully Mike said he's
howling.
He's howling. Oh. Middle of the day, an angry bloodhound on the farm. Well, we're hoping you might get Starlink, you were saying, and then we can connect with you maybe more reliably.
Yeah.
I look forward to that. But let's keep going along from this foundation.
Yeah.
And talk about some of the topics that we love. Maybe I was thinking, and you can put them in your own framework. But I was thinking maybe in the order of biochar, maybe HOCl, and then plant medicine. But whatever order you think, those are kind of the...
Okay.
It's okay. Let's try again. How's now? Pasquale, are you hearing me clearly?
Hearing you just fine, Bill.
Okay. It's just Mike's connection. I just want to make sure it's not mine.
Organic chemistry... Yeah. So yeah, there's a delay, and so I'll just start talking. And the scientific term organic chemistry is carbon chemistry. Not like what we were just talking about, organic production methods. But at the heart of both is carbon. And as a guy who's made many, many tons of compost, I'll be making some more later here today. You can make really great compost, which is a semi-decomposed carbonaceous material that adds carbon to the soil, which breaks down through the microbes in the soil into plant food. So it's a cycle. The compost I'm making today will last a year or two. The Frwd ale people I mentioned is where the bearers of technology, technique is where you could go to find ads for Troy-Bilt rototillers and these sorts of things. But they also promoted compost, and I got on the bandwagon and have many farmers. So one of the positive things we do is we add compost to the soil. But the sad fact of the matter is a very small amount of that compost as super stable humus remains. It ends up particularly in an active farming where we're tilling on an annual basis. We go through we through that very quickly, and you have to keep adding it. It's not a one-time, it's a process, not an event. On the other hand, in the Amazon basin, they have found areas which tropical forests are notorious, or when a tree falls in the jungle, it immediately gets recycled into the what's called above ground biomass. So that, say quickly, the warmer the temperature is. So these are temperature regulated. All little bugs are happy when it's warm, and it's not, like right now. So they found these areas in the otherwise not great soils of the Amazon basin, some hundreds of thousands of hectares in extent, called terra preta. Dark earth is the Portuguese translation. In Brazil, particularly, the archaeology first noticed this. There are some areas where not only are the soils particularly rich and sustainably so, but folks come and dig that stuff up and pack it off and put it in their gardens and so forth. So that began an inquiry some nearly 30 years ago into these terra preta soils and how were they possibly, no, these are on benches, these are on higher ground. So they started doing digs, and they found that this dark earth could be one up to found pottery shards and fish bones. So we have come to the conclusion that folks were doing this on purpose, intentionally. And these terra preta soils were somehow like a very advanced form of organic agriculture way back in the day. And the reason it's still there is because when you take a piece of, unlike my best compost, and put that in the soil, you can come back in 5, 50, 500 years, and that piece of charcoal is still there. And it operates somewhat like a rechargeable battery. You picture the plant material, the structure of it has a lot of internal surface area. When you carbonize it, you create a skeleton, a carbon skeleton. And that has a cation exchange surface that's able to capture nutrients as they pass through the soil solution, hold on to them weakly enough that the plants can pry them back and use them for their purposes. And like a rechargeable battery, you can just rinse and repeat. It will biochar will last. Biochar is the modern term to describe this process, which is now being done deliberately at industrial scale, beginning to be done deliberately at industrial scale in places like the United States and in Africa, and increasingly in South America, where sort of like the motherland. So we're following the path of people whose civilization, sort of like the coast Indians, it just, when they went away, it all composted. Except the first people who came down the Amazon, a Spanish explorer, the Spanish arrived, said he saw extensive, as in giant cities, which 100 years later, when the next folk came down, they go, there's no city here. It had all melted and composted, and the people having died of smallpox and other European diseases were gone. And without people there keep original nature. Having said that, another interesting thing about that is that we think of the Amazon rainforest as being this primal, very biodiverse ecosystem. And it turns out, as we begin to look at this more carefully, that the folks a couple, 3,000-4,000 years ago, plants around were carrying on what didn't to the Spanish look like agriculture, but it actually was a very sophisticated of an agriculture, wasn't even recognized. For instance, cacao, from which chocolate comes. We can't really find the original wild plant. It's been in human hands for so long. It's from Mexico to Argentina, or let's just say to Bolivia. That plant's been brought around, selected, adapted to suit the climate and the culinary interests of the folks. So where it started, for sure. It's so one of the things I've always done is I do what I call a cultural overlay. Americans, the Japanese had landed here. What would this place look like under a Japanese cultural screen? Way more intensive agriculture, I guarantee you that. The idea that we're cowboys. We came and was a principal interest in animal agriculture. And then, because certainly here in the Northwest, there was a forest here in most of the places, and you had to do something with that before you could even. So this idea of the term I grew up with was stump ranching. You can buy a piece of logged over land, you bring in some cows, you slowly clear the stumps, and eventually you'll have a little homestead. That is still my goal, and the goal of many people who prefer to be in a valley rather than out on. We're of necessity inventing organic agricultural systems. It's a managed ecosystem. There are several or are actively manageable. Others, like the microbial community, we can only manage them indirectly through inputs and in some cases now inoculate. We can actually introduce specific nitrogen fixing and other beneficial microorganisms into our crops, either through the irrigation. Advances are huge. We're really, this is one of the very frontiers leading the way, but they're using organic methods, which is a very interesting kind of a turnabout. I like to smilingly refer to the motto of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and that is, to be commanded, nature must be obeyed. And they got that right. They got that right. We have to understand what the land is capable of, what it's doing before we got there, in order to manage it. Now, when you look at the Great Plains, the grain basket, one of the grain baskets of the world, where the buffalo used to roam, the combination of the buffalo roaming in large groups and chomping down what's called grazing in modern terminology. It is, we really are just now coming to understand how much fire has been an a managed ecological influence. In the Puget Sound region, we know that the indigenous people would burn the prairies in the oak savannas. The oaks had evolved bark that's pretty fire resistant, as has Douglas fir. And then by removing summer came from that term, the fire, the smoky look of the late summer when the Indians were burning the ground. That made way for then the the bulbs of the camas, which was their main starch crop, to flourish. It also made for fresh green foliage in the spring, which would be for game. And once horses came, then this was a pasture for horses. So using fire as a management tool, Smokey the Bear's only got it part right. It's really an important tool, and we're learning how to use it again. We're reinventing things that we consider them less sophisticated people. I consider them more sophisticated people have been doing for centuries.
Yes. Yeah. I just want to chime in there, Mike, and put a little bit of a bow on that, or wrap it up that, for folks to understand what Mike's been talking about, it's that in order to solve climate change, fire and charcoal, which is pure sequestered carbon and carbon dioxide, right, from plants that are breathing carbon dioxide. This is a critical piece, not the only, there's no silver bullet, but it's a critical piece of how we could start to take action in our lives in order to really course correct climate change, because we all eat, right? We're talking about the food system. And if you listen to our episode at A Path Forward and what Mike's been talking about, we're talking about the potential of not just changing your light bulbs and trying to recycle, which isn't working, but sequestering carbon with every single meal you eat. And imagine everyone in the modern industrialized world, even just that. We'll wait on the delay here a little bit.
So here's a project that I'll be involved in over the next couple of years in the Amazon. In fact, we've already had a couple of kind of crypto carbon collapse. The carbon market, the Chicago carbon market, initially was the place where the thing was done. And the problem is when you get speculators involved, who are trying to jack up the value, the perceived value of the price, so they harvest carbon trading. It's right in there with cryptocurrency as far as I'm concerned. But the idea is, I use the analogy of our modern industrial world is a car that has a speedometer, and everything else is idiot lights to tell you when you run out of oil or you're overheated. We don't have gauges. We don't have good ways of understanding all the processes as they need to be able to monitor them so that we can sort of steer this ship. And at one level, of course, the climate's been changing forever. We live in a place that was once the seafloor here, but there it was. And the other is that carbon dioxide, in fact, is the most important fertilizer for plants. I mean, they suck it in every day to build. With only idiot lights, we're rolling downhill and we don't know that we've run out of brake fluid. We don't have the ability to keep steering in a conscious, directed manner. So what we try to do, we put in all these systems approaches to taxing carbon and this sort of thing. What we're trying to do is stimulate intelligent behavior, and that's not easy. And yet we have in wood and agricultural waste, but in particular wood waste, that could be made into char. That char could be installed in productive soils and used in other ways, and it will remain in a stable form for centuries. That's nice that we have a tool like that, and we haven't turned it into an industry yet. Says something about the way this system currently operates. we could have internal combustion engines that got 80 miles to the gallon. We could have them tomorrow, but for whatever reason, that hasn't taken place. So we need to look at what are the incentives for bad behavior or thoughtless behavior, and what are the disincentives for good behavior, and how do we address those in ways that make economic sense. Shoulders with guilt over what they should be doing. We have to give them some means to do this, and it's accountable, it's renewable, it accumulates. It's so there's kind of the equivalent of interest value. It's a fix that keeps on working over centuries, and that's what we need to get in place now. Even if we had cars at 80 miles a gallon, that actually makes it an incentive to keep using gasoline. So we really need to have a broader menu, and that menu needs to be informed by good science. Guilt will get you so far, but good science is what's going to get us home to the future.
Yes. Well, speaking of that future, Mike, that's perfect. And you just, I think in my book, hit the nail on the head of a path forward. So it's breaking up a little bit, but what I want to promise everyone, I think we're gonna wrap up for today. We usually try to keep this about 45 minutes. But what we will do is Mike will be back, and we will keep working on our connection, because what you're saying is pure gold. And to me, and maybe more so, you're outlining with your experience what the path forward is. These, how to implement intelligence, right? These incentives. This is at the core of how do we move through the current era. What is our path forward? And that's the purpose of this program and the podcast. So I think we'll kind of wrap up today,
Yep.
But we mentioned some other topics that we're absolutely going to come back to, hopefully very soon, and keep sharing all you have to offer, and keep exploring these ideas and having folks tune in.
Okay, glad to help.
I want to acknowledge you, Mike. Thank you so much for doing this with your life work, and it's so incredible. So looking forward to having you back on and getting into a lot of the specifics. We did put up a couple of different links for people to check out, biocharinternational.org, as well as the tilth.org. You're presenting real solutions to real problems, and this is absolutely incredible.
Yep, exactly, Pasquale. Real solutions.
Really look forward to coming up there and seeing what you're doing, and giving really look forward to having you back on. Thank you, Mike, so much.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Put me to work. I can get my hands dirty.
Good. Well, we'll
Yes,
figure out the connections and get a little more solid connection, and how to have you back.
Yeah, I'll show you.
All right. So
yeah, I think we're gonna sign off for today. Thank you all for hanging in. A few people watching live, and just everyone. I know you're kind of listening to that broke up audio a little bit, but there was enough there, I think, to start to grasp what we're talking about, what we're doing here. And if you go back and you listen or watch any of the recent live episodes, this is what we've been kind of leading up to and pointing out where we're going, and what we have to offer. So more will come, and we'll keep working on the technology.
What an incredible resource, and just amazing wealth of knowledge, literally his whole life work. And so thanks for for making that happen, Bill. And check out the replay, guys. If you're here live, great. We welcome you. And for all of our listeners, you know, the streams will be up, hopefully for good, both on the Path Forward YouTube channel as well as the Path Forward Facebook as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, and have a blessed day, everyone. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. More to come.
Ciao. Take care.
Ciao.